No doubt, singer Brian McKnight is a musical force to be reckoned with. And tonight, on stage at the Fox Theater in St. Louis, he is exactly the man his fans need him to be. With his smooth vocals, taking audience members on a musical journey to the point of no return. As a pure musical talent, Brian is among the best, singing, writing, producing, and playing more than 8 instruments. He developed his soulful gospel voice singing in church as a child in Buffalo, New York. His music reflects strong influences by artists like Donny Hathaway, James Ingram, and Earth, Wind, and Fire. With more than 30 million albums sold worldwide, his music contributes to the soundtrack for a generation. And who can forget his appearance on the show Martin?
There will never come a day you'll ever hear me say that I want and need to be without you. Is it a crime that
More recently, Brian dropped his 16th studio album. It's entitled Genesis.
You know, I really have been trying, since technology has changed so much, trying to figure out a way to write and produce the way I always have, but also incorporate today's technology without having people say, oh, he's just trying to be Drake, or he's just trying to be this guy or that guy. And I think Genesis is a combination of finally figuring out what that formula is. And I said to myself, I was like, you know, if no one had ever heard of me after 14 albums, what would I want to present to them? So Genesis is kind of a rebirth, you know, a repackaging of the same old Brian McKnight.
Well, you know what I was going to say. My next thing was ambitious, bold, or just pure. Which ones would you describe?
All three. I think, you know, the problem is if I do what I always do, people will be like, well, that's just what he does. And if I do something new, they'll say, well, he's not doing what he normally does. So I kind of have to walk right down the middle of the line by being risky with 2 or 3 songs, having 8 songs that are right down the middle, and then having a couple of wild cards.
Well, it brings me to the question of who is Brian McKnight musically?
Oh man, musically, I am colorless, tasteless, with all the color and taste you can possibly have.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
You know what? I grew up at a time when music was not compartmentalized. It was genre-less. You know, you hear Willie Nelson, then Earth, Wind, and Fire, then, you know, Kenny Loggins, then Luther Vandross, all on the same station. And I always thought it was great that you got to hear different types of interpretations of music. And I think that's the music I've always created. On the one hand, I've had R&B hits. On the other hand, I've had pop hits. I've had country hits. I've had rock hits. I've been sort of all over the board, which can be great and detrimental at the same time because people don't know they got a label. They got to put a label on it. You got a label, but I'm a black man too. So then there's sort of this weird kind of thing. I always wanted the greatest number of people, regardless of economics, regardless of color or creed, to be able to enjoy the music that I did. Because if you tell somebody that I do R&B in this particular country, there are people who might think that's something else. I say I create soul music, music from the soul and for the soul.
you put your hand in mine, and then you said hello, and I can hardly speak. My heart is beating so.
You love writing about love and romance.
Well, see, one thing we all have in common. If I only wrote about fixing cars, only auto mechanics would be able to relate to what I'm doing. Everybody wants to love someone. Everybody wants to be loved back in return the same way, and that's where you get the dichotomy of love. You know, I might be at 75% for a week. You might be at 25% for a month, and then, you know, the scales get sort of unbalanced.
Who's your favorite artist?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I have so many. Stevie is probably number one on the list, but there's 50 of them.
All is fair in love. Love's a crazy game. Well, Stevie sung a lot of socially conscious songs. You ever think about doing that type of music as well?
Well, interestingly enough, the title track from the new record, Genesis, is about getting back to the way we probably should be, and probably the way that we could be. So if you listen to the lyric of that, the very first line says, "We don't really talk like we used to, just 128 characters or less." So that gives you the basis of, what that song is about. Do you remember all of your songs? Because you've written so many. If I said like a few words, would you know what song that is? Okay. I know. See, in the show, even last night in Newport Beach, there's a section of that show where I open up the floor for requests, and sometimes there'll be an obscure one from a record of a song that I, haven't played probably since I recorded it. Okay. And I tell them I may not know the words, but I know the music backwards and forwards. I do want to test you on this just a little bit. Okay. It's Undeniable. That's back at one. That's easy.
It's undeniable that we should be together.
My Shattered.
One Last Cry.
My shattered dreams and broken heart are mending oceans.
There Will Never Come a Day.
Never Felt This Way.
There will never come a day you'll ever hear me say.
You Say.
You Say. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to make it too easy.
Okay, that's the only one for me.
Say you've seen too many things that turn out to be too good to be true.
It's Another.
Oh, Let It Snow.
Yeah.
I got you.
I was throwing that in there.
Let it snow, let it snow. Outside it's cold, but the fire's blazing. So baby, let it snow.
And I was asking you earlier, do you always know where your writing is going to take you?
Do I always know? No, I just write. Once we get in the car and get where we're going, then when we end up where, like today, I never knew that 3 years ago I'd be here today. Like we won't know where we'll be tomorrow, but I know that a song is going to take me there.
In 2012, one song took him to a place no one was expecting.
And the name of the song is If You're Ready to Learn. So let me give you.
Since Brian's first album in 1992, he has been known for soulful romantic ballads. But If You're Ready to Learn caused a backlash among those surprised not so much by its explicit content, but that it was coming from Brian McKnight.
To show you if you're ready to learn, let me.
Well, I explained that before I did it, that it was actually a joke. That it was just, it was me writing a song because I saw a girl singing a song at the bar the night before that was way worse than the song that I wrote. And then I actually did it for a comedy website, and we just shot a comedy video, but for whatever reason, people thought that it was a serious thing. I never thought that it would blow up the internet like it did, but hindsight, I probably wouldn't do it again, but it kind of showed you that if you start off bad, in a sense, you can always be good. But if you start off good, people don't want to hear you do anything that might be left of center.
These days, Brian is using the internet to promote his Brianized video series and showcase his talented sons along with his brother Claude. Just listen to their version of the Brady Bunch theme.
Who was bringing up three very lovely girls.
But here, during our interview, there was one last thing to ask. Can you sing a little bit from the new album?
Well, Forever's been out. I Want You just came out last Tuesday. Is it a crime that I worship your lips and what you do with your fingertips? It's about time. A half an hour's passed and not too soon to ask. Baby, you got that something, and I need you now. I know you like to hear me say it out loud, that I want you. It goes like that.
Oh my God, brother, thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
What's next?
Oh man, just more of the same.
More of the same is very likely more than enough.
If ever I believe my work is done, then I start back.